Venti in the big Luna 3 is actually a viable main DPS now. While he won't be up there in the S tiers, he does non-negligible damage and is way better than what he was before this update. In Razor language, Venti creates an Anemo Hurricane that sucks enemies in and is great for grouping. While his burst is active, Venti's normal attacks do Anemo damage and will also extend his burst by 2 seconds. Not to mention, he also provides a 50% damage bonus to the on-fielder if they swirl. This means he can provide a 50% all-round damage buff to himself as a DPS, but also any other Anemo DPS that can swirl, even including Chaska since it's an all-round damage buff, not just an Anemo one. As for Venti's skill, it's pretty much the same as it always has been, but naturally will do more damage during his burst after he swirls. In practice, a Venti rotation mostly consists of Venti doing his burst, normal attacks, and then skill whenever it's available. Alright, now let's get into the actual guide and how you would build Venti specifically for being an on-field DPS. When it comes to weapons, honestly, a lot of the general 5-star DPS weapons will work perfectly fine on Venti and definitely rival his new signature weapon, the Daybreak Chronicles. The Daybreak Chronicles are still going to be his overall best in slot weapon, however, weapons like Polar Star and Thundering Pulse are really not that far behind, so if you already have them and want to save wishes, I probably wouldn't bother trying to get his new weapon. Weapons also like Skyward Harp, which are from the standard banner, is also a really strong option. All of these weapons can work. Moving on to free-to-play only weapons, Rust R5 is probably going to be one of his best options. You could also use Slingshot R5, Song of Stillness R5 if you have a healer on your team, or also Chainbreaker R5. And then as for the Battle Pass weapons, Viridescent Hunt and Scion of the Blazing Sun also work as well. They give a bit of crit, so that's always nice. Just keep in mind that the weapons that are going to have more charge attacks focused in their passives might not be as useful, given the fact that he's going to be doing more normal attacks than anything. As for his artifacts, 4-piece Desert Pavilion Chronicle is probably his overall best in slot artifact set for his current DPS playstyle. This does mean that you're going to want to squeeze a charge attack in the beginning of his rotation just to get the buffs that the passive gives. The 2-piece set gives him 15% Anemo damage bonus, and then the 4-piece set will give him an extra 40% of normal charge and plunge attack damage for 15 seconds after he does a charge attack. Hence, you want to just try and squeeze in a charge attack at the beginning of his rotation. Now, I did just say that that artifact set is probably going to be his overall best in slot, but technically speaking, Echoes of an Offering is looking to be just a fraction better damage-wise, but this is only if you have good ping, because the set can be a little gimmicky, and if you have over 100 ping, it's probably not going to be all that consistent. In short, go for Echoes of an Offering if you have great ping, and if not, go for Desert Pavilion Chronicle, because it's literally like pretty much on par with Echoes, and is probably going to be more reliable, assuming you could just do that charge attack at the beginning of a rotation. None of us really know if this will or won't happen, but I think it's safe to assume that we might get a Hexarai artifact set at some point. A lot of the other Hexarai characters no longer feel like they have a dedicated artifact set, so it does feel like there's a good possibility of us getting Hexarai specific artifacts, possibly next update, possibly the update after. Not sure how long I'm gonna have to wait. It's similar with the Anefa situation where she did not have a specific artifact set when she released, but like what, a patch or two later, she did. This also means you might not want to farm a whole new 4-piece, and so a 2-piece Anemo damage bonus and then a 2-piece attack will be fine. That's what I run my Venti on as of right now. If you just have an absolute cracked 4-piece set of Viridescent Veneer, you could also use that. You could also use Emblem of Severed Fates if you want to give him a bit more burst damage based on his ER, but I don't personally recommend this set called DPS Venti specifically. Alright, so moving on to his talents for DPS Venti, and I know this is a little bit weird, but specifically DPS Venti, you're going to want to prioritize his normal attacks, followed by his burst, followed by his skill. If you want to really crack DPS Venti, I would triple crown him or get every one of his skills up to like 8 or 9, because they're all going to be useful and they're all going to be contributing to his damage. But since you're going to be using his normal attacks and his burst the most, and then his skill will be like a mini nuke in between those attacks, I am being rewarded by being unsmart with my resources. This is great. Moving on to Venti's constellation value. C1 fires 2 additional arrows per aim shot, dealing 33% of the original arrow's damage. Venti C1 with the Hexerite buffs basically make it so that an additional 2 extra arrows will be fired per Windsunder arrow, which is per normal attack, each dealing 20% of the original. This basically just gives him more arrows, more damage. They also are like mini missiles. With the Hexerite buffs, Venti C2 now decreases anemo and physical resistance by 24% for 10 seconds. Additionally, after unleashing Venti's burst, he gains the Wherever a Breeze Blows effect, which basically resets his elemental skill cooldown, and this effect basically makes it so that his skill does 300% of its original damage, which is bonkers. Additionally, his normal attacks also have a 25% chance of creating this effect, and overall this effect lasts for 15 seconds. C4 now makes it so that Venti gives a 25% anemo damage bonus for both himself and the active party member. It's honestly nice. Only useful for anemo DPSs though, so himself or, you know, your anemo DPS that might be on field. And then finally, his C6 basically just gives him like an extra 100% crit damage. Sure, why not, honestly? And also, targets who take damage from his burst also have their anemo resistance decreased by 20 seconds. And on top of that, if an element is absorbed by his burst, then the enemy's resistance towards that corresponding element is also decreased by 20%. When it comes to Venti's overall constellation value, going for his C1 or C2 is probably more worthwhile than going for his new signature weapon, C2 being a really strong stopping point. Moving on to teams, a lot of Venti's best teams are going to have Phorazon Bennett in them, and then another Hexencircle character. You absolutely want to have another Hexencircle character in the team to unlock Venti's true DPS playstyle. Venti's absolute best team is looking to be Venti, Duran, Phorazon, and Bennett. But in case you don't want to pull for Duran, you could also switch Duran out for Albedo, Mona, or Fischl, as those are probably the best other Hexerite characters to pair with Venti. There's this really cool list of teams over on Twitter by Shimsetsu Oni, I hope I said your name right, with a bunch of DPS Venti team options. I am very excited for Venti's buffs, as I'm sure you are too if you clicked on this video. I hope this guide was useful to you. Just a quick disclaimer, I'm no theory crafter, so take what I say with a grain of salt. A lot of the information in this video is compiled from my general knowledge of Venti, how to use him, my understanding of the Hexerite buffs, and also a lot of information gathered from other content creators who got access to the creator experience server. With all that said and done, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.